everybody. Welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast. We are the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox farm system from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to, I guess, currently Fort Myers and all stops in between. Thank you for the listen. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of SoxProspects.com, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host and our director of scouting at the site, Ian Kundle. It is Thursday, May the 14th as we record. This is episode number, I should have pulled this up. I think it is 188? 179.
I was going to say 175. I had no idea, though.
Yeah, it was 178. I knew there was an 8 last time. Episode number 179. Thank you for joining us. Ian, still no news really on much, but we have some news to talk about.
We have news that there's no news, but they're talking about maybe making news, right? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds good. I'll yes and that. But then there's also the draft, which there is actually news on. It was pretty funny. We finished recording the last episode to find a report from Jeff Passan about the draft.
Yeah. And then I think at
15 minutes.
2 days later, it was finalized. The actual details came out.
So we'll talk a little bit about
And I think that's going to be an interesting discussion because there's a lot going on there.
Yes, there is. There is. And because of the did we ever talk about the last time did we talk about the mock draft?
No.
Okay, so we've got to talk about that.
Yes.
We've got to talk about the mock draft we did because that was the next night.
Yeah, because we recorded on the 1st, and that was the 3rd, I think.
Yeah, something like that. It was 2 nights later. Yeah.
No, so it was the 2nd.
Okay, anyway. Yeah. So we did a mock draft over at prospectslive.com. We're going to talk to you about that, and we've got the State of the System series marching on. Closed up our position-by-position look, but that doesn't mean the series is done. We'll talk to you a little bit of...
2 more pieces to come.
Yep, 2 more pieces coming, so keep an eye out for that. Of course, as always, if you want to support the podcast, you can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. That's Patreon, patreon.com/SoxProspects. You can support the show. We want to thank our $5 level Patreon supporters. That's Kyle Costigan, Tyler Woodrow, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, Bill Stanton, Deb Kendall, Evan Kirkwood, Hurricanes 1, Chris Fox, James O'Hara, Nathan Kenyon, Andrew Wallen, David B., Ben Burnett, Al Mendel, Kevin Catrides, Ben NRI, Paul Denyer, Lendl Martin, Cassandra Buchdan, our newest $5 level Patreon supporter, James P. McMahon, Mr. McMahon. Thank you all for your support. We appreciate it. And of course, I should have mentioned, we have, as always, your emails. Send your emails to podcast@soxprospects.com. We want to talk about what you want to hear about. And actually, first, Ian, let's open with this. Last episode, we reported on the status of Noah's Song. We reported that Song, at least as of the time that COVID-19 hit, was still working out in Annapolis, waiting for word on his waiver request.
Correct.
After that, we received, this is tremendous, we received an email from a emailer whose name you all might remember if you listen to the show at all, Aaron Mehta. Aaron has sent us numerous emails. Turns out he is kind of tied in for reasons that I'll let him get into in our quick talk with him. But
he actually knows stuff.
He had some intel. So this is great. So here is, I just talked a little bit ago with Aaron about this. So here is Aaron. Aaron, thank you for coming on the show. This came about because last episode, Ian and I were talking about Noah's Song, and I mentioned that we reported that at least as of when COVID-19 hit, Noah's Song was in Annapolis, working out, waiting for word on his waiver. And what had been reported before in other outlets was that the Naval Academy had, recommended, or at least, submitted to the Navy that he did not qualify under the waiver that had been enacted under President Trump. I'm probably using the wrong terminology here, so go ahead and correct me. But that he did not qualify because he simply had graduated before it had gone into effect. So it was just a standard. There was no no kind of, no weighing the equities of the situation. It was just it was not in effect when he graduated, ergo does not qualify. You then emailed after that, and I was like, oh, good, great, another email from Aaron, and then I read through it. You are kind of uniquely qualified to actually talk about this, so why don't you kind of fill everyone in on what when you are not listening to the podcast, or maybe I guess when you're listening to the podcast, come to think of it, your day gig is pretty interesting and really relevant to this.
Yeah, I've definitely listened to the podcast when I was supposed to be working.
Okay.
My name's Aaron Mehta. I'm a reporter and editor with a paper called Defense News. We're a trade publication based in the D.C. area. Essentially, my job is to cover the Pentagon, primarily things like technology, strategy, policy, things like that. Mm-hmm. I've got a little bit of crossover interest going on here.
And some well-placed sources, of course. No, I'm kidding. But no, so you say the email you sent me hit a number of really interesting topics. So I'll just comb through them really quick. First, Ian and I have talked about this a little bit, but people on our forums on Twitter are extremely frustrated, frankly, within the organization, are very frustrated with how long this waiver situation has taken with Noah Song. Beyond the standard sort of baseball guy maybe not being high on the priority list for situations such as dealing with a global pandemic, and all, the news that the Navy has, generated recently in maybe more of the negative sphere in terms of dealing with that. But there are some unique circumstances that have led, probably in part, to why this has taken so long. And what are those?
Yeah, so the Navy is, to put it gently, kind of a cluster, and it's kind of been that way for the last couple of years. So the very short version, and I swear this is actually the short version, is there's been a lot of upheaval for the last couple of years because of a scandal about a guy named Fat Leonard. You can read about that. It's a lot of fun. That's caused a certain amount of chaos. Then there was a Navy Secretary named Richard Spencer who was in place, who was the one who was supposed to be weighing in on this. And then he ran afoul of the president over a certain issue. He was then kicked out at the end of last year. There was then an acting Navy Secretary who, again, would be the person who you would think would make a decision. He was distracted by other issues, and then he ended up getting booted because of the COVID-19 situation on the carrier.
Right. And that's
that people are probably tracking.
And that's James McPherson?
No, so James McPherson is now
he's the current one. Oh,
he's the current acting.
Braithwaite
right.
was the... No.
So it's...
Okay, you go ahead. I'm going to shut up.
So Thomas Maudley was the acting. So Richard Spencer was Navy Secretary in December. He gets replaced by Thomas Maudley, who's acting as Navy Secretary until April. He gets kicked out. Now Anderson is in charge. Mm-hmm. And he's essentially a placeholder while they try to get this guy Braithwaite, who's the current ambassador to Norway, in. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just sliding chairs. Okay. And, the reality is this issue, as you said, is, it's a big one for us, but on the scale of things the Navy's dealing with, it's low level.
Yeah.
And without a full, it's the type of thing that an acting secretary is probably not going to want to touch.
Right.
It's something that a full secretary is going to want to just sign off on and actually look at.
Unless they get direction from the president himself or something, potentially.
Yeah, I actually looked into, the guy who's coming in, Braithwaite, who probably, it looks like he'll end up getting confirmed probably in the next couple of weeks. No Boston ties that I can see. I keep thinking it's really a shame because, Noah Song, if he was in the Army, he'd probably be pretty good because both the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who's an Army guy, and the current top general of the Army are both from the Boston area, both Sox fans. So they probably would take care of this. Unfortunately, he's in the Navy.
Okay. Fair. All right. Well, so that's kind of the background of the situation. But the other really interesting thing that you had mentioned, and this is something that I think I mentioned on the last episode as a question that hadn't really popped into my head until recently, which is we had all been thinking, all right, Noah Song gets drafted. Noah Song plays in Lowell for a month or whatever it was. Noah Song goes to flight school. He comes back in 2022. He's gone for 2020 and 2021 if his waiver is not granted, right? Fast forward to now May of 2020, and there's still no news, and it kind of hits me last month, or maybe it was in March. Well, wait, has the 2-year clock even started if he hasn't gone to flight school yet? Because we were thinking, at least I was thinking, 2 years of flight school. And you looked into that a little bit. What did you find?
Yeah, so with all the caveats just in place here that I'm not a personnel reporter professionally, I did talk with a number of my colleagues who do this stuff, and they, universally said, yeah, your clock starts, your service time clock starts when you graduate. I mean, it sometimes takes a while for you to get to your next assignment to have that kind of going. That can be just logistics happen. And so the clock should be running. Mm-hmm. Caveats are, again, I don't know necessarily all the details of, what songs agreements are, things like that. But
sure.
Again, talking to people, they all kind of said, no, if that's the situation, the clock should be ticking.
And then do you know, and I'm putting you on the spot because we haven't discussed this, so I don't know if you know this or not. Do you know how long his flight school would take? And the reason I ask being, he has said all along, and I believe he is sincere about this, that he said, you know what, if I wind up going to flight school, I'm pumped I get to go to flight school. As we did talk about a little bit, if you get into flight school, that's a good thing. Do we know how long it would be if it's something where he says, well, if I get in, I want to finish. I don't want to leave flight school, whatever the equivalent is of a credit short, right? Like, does he just stay the extra 6 months to finish or something? Do you have any visibility on that?
I don't. My guess would be it's almost exactly like what you just said is, hey, if, I'm this close, I'm not going to, bail out early.
Right.
Let me just finish this. Right. And that's the type of thing that, if he's at the point where, look, frankly, he's not the normal cadet, right? He's going to flight school. The people in there are going to know about him, know about his story. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to be aware of what's going on. And that's something that the commander there is going to be able to have a little leeway on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So it's not necessarily – okay. So that's the other thing that now just pops into my head is how long does flight school take? And is it going to stay the whole time? But I'll have to look further into that. Okay, cool. And then I guess we talked a little bit more on kind of the current status of the military with the pandemic. I presumed that Song wasn't still in Annapolis, but who knows? And just kind of what's the status as far as with COVID-19 of, the Navy, the military, et cetera, as it might affect Song?
Yeah, it's actually kind of a mess. Basically, in the middle of March or late March, when it became clear this was not a thing that was going to be just a couple of weeks, the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, put in an order basically saying, hey, nobody move. If you have your next duty assignment, you're staying where you are. If you're supposed to be rotating home, you're staying on your ship. Mm-hmm. This is just what we got to do to control this thing for a little bit.
Sure.
That little bit has become now through the end of June 30th.
Right.
And that's going to have some knock-on effects, even after they, kind of say, okay, everyone can go where they want to go or where they're supposed to go. Usually not where you want to go. There's going to be logistics follow on. There's going to be a lag time, things like that. Yep. So that's going to come into play. What, I don't know, and there's been some speculation, but nothing official on this, is are they going to try to, I guess, backdate, for the lack of a better term, some of the service time or duty station, things like this, because the way it works, if you get a rotation, if you're now 6 months into your rotation, you're not there yet, are you going to rotate out faster than you should have, or are you going to be held longer? How is this going to work?
Right.
That's the kind of things they're trying to work through themselves.
Right. And so if they're trying to work through them, they're not necessarily working through them for one particular, academy grad who's...
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, as a, obviously a Sox fan,
right.
I don't have much hope that this Noah Song case is going to get resolved particularly soon. I just think it's, it's a low-level thing with everything else going on, with the issues the Navy has had to deal with.
Sure.
It just strikes me the type of thing that's going to end up, unfortunately, falling through the cracks.
Yeah, I mean, there's just bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
Much bigger fish to fry. You've got global pandemic. Whether the Red Sox get their minor league pitcher now or in 2 years is not necessarily at the top of the to-do list. That makes sense.
Well, the nice thing is we might not have to worry about it in, service time with the Sox or anything, considering there might not be a season. So
that's what we were. That's kind of what made me think of it, right? It's just kind of okay. In March, if his service times clock hasn't started because of the waiver, do you just drop the waiver, get him to school, and say, look, you're losing 1 year anyway. Let's just, make it so it's this year and next year as opposed to losing you for 2021 and 2022 as well. But it sounds like that's not how it's going to work. So,
yeah, I mean, this is where, like I say, there's a lot of moving parts, but it's a wild time, man. I mean, the stuff they're trying to figure out at the Pentagon is just, like I say, a lot.
I'm sure. Awesome. Well, this is enlightening. I'm glad we've kind of gotten more or less to the bottom of some of these questions, and I appreciate you coming on to talk them through, Aaron. Appreciate your support as always, and it's been great talking to you. When we're allowed to have contact with other human beings sometime in the next 3 or 4 years, no, I'm kidding. At some point soon, let's grab a beer or something, man.
Yeah, this is really a highlight of certainly the month, though it's not saying much. But as I said, you've been a longtime fan, so this is great.
Cool. Thanks, man. Awesome. Yeah, so that was great. I mean, like he said, Ian, looks like the clock is ticking on Song, whether or not he's at flight school.
Well, I think that's the most important takeaway, because it would have been a disaster, as we kind of speculated in the last episode, if this wasn't counting, especially because nobody's playing right now. But if he is only missing one true year, because they're not going to play minor league baseball most likely this year, unfortunately.
They'll have something. It's just not going to be minor league baseball.
But that's what I mean. Yeah. And even if there was something, pitchers are really going to struggle to get the innings they need to.
Yeah, missing this year
is the best year you could possibly have to miss if you're going to. And then that puts his clock only 1 year away, and that's more or less, the same timeline you expect of a guy coming back from an injury, except Song's not going to be injured. He's going to be healthy and working out. So it might – I'm interested – I haven't decided what I'm going to do with his ranking going forward, because I factored in missing 2 full minor league seasons of development. But if this weird year ever – so it's something we'll probably have to talk about when we have more details on what happens with the minor league season this year.
Mm-hmm. And there's the other thing, as I mentioned to Aaron when we were talking, is, the other question now becomes, how long does flight school take? Because say he reports to flight school in October.
Yeah.
If it takes 2 years, is he going to want to leave flight school?
Yeah, well, because we know he's very committed to the military. I remember there were quotes coming out that he was happy to serve and everything. So that's a good question. I mean, something we'll probably have that will be further looked into in the future.
Answering questions begets more questions. But yeah, thanks to Aaron for hopping on real quick to talk about that. Let's move on, Ian. Do you want to do draft? Let's do draft.
I think we should do draft because it's So we have a lot going on there between our mock draft and then we're the best mock. We are the best mock drafters ever.
We're awesome
because we draft guys who probably won't be there when the Red Sox pick. That's how good we are.
Nope. So this was Friday. It was Friday the 1st.
First, we should probably go over the actual draft news.
Okay, fine. We'll do that first.
I think that's more important. It's been finalized. Basically,
we've talked on here about the fact that the Red Sox do not have a second round draft pick this year.
Correct.
Last episode, I believe it was, we talked about how the owners and players had agreed that the owners had, or I don't think it was the last one, it was like two episodes ago or something. The owners had the ability to shorten the draft to as few as 5 rounds. There was hope it could be 10. But it wasn't going to be more than 10, really.
No, and the owners tried to use it as a leverage point to get concessions from the players, and the play that made no sense to me. But I think the players were really?
Well, what they tried to do was this passing.
I don't remember.
I think it was Kylie McDaniel.
About it.
On ESPN.
Highly recommend reading it. He did a deep dive into it.
The owners offered to do a 10-round draft.
Round 6 to 10 were half the slot value of last year.
And hard slotted too, right?
Yes.
Hard slotting in those picks.
Yes.
First 5 rounds were not hard slotted?
No, but they were the same.
And they didn't go up at all from last year.
Correct.
Yes, which they still haven't. But
no, they're the same as last year.
Yeah. But they said the players were like, no, we're not letting you do that because we're afraid of the precedent that now sets on hard slotting bonuses, on being okay with a 10-round draft.
Well, I think the other thing was that if the players were willing, that basically in the agreement they had in April or March, whenever it was, it said their draft would be 5 rounds, but there wasn't a chance to make it longer. And the players there's obviously the huge talking point or negotiation point, which we'll get to later, about the salary. And I think the players were worried about the precedent of willing to alter that what they signed then and what that would mean for the salary discussion. because obviously in that document, the owners and players both thought they agreed to, or the players thought they agreed to prorated salary of what they got in the previous year, depending on how many games they played.
Regardless of whether there were fans in the stands.
Correct. And now the owners are saying, well, there's no fans, so we need to renegotiate that number. And I think the players were worried, or at least I believe it was Jeff Passan who said it, that the players were basically worried that if they were willing to negotiate on the draft, it signaled to the owners that that document wasn't as binding and might hurt any negotiation they have for the other one. Basically, it takes away from their bargaining point, or it takes away from their argument that this was like, what we signed is what we want to do.
Right.
If they're willing to make the sacrifices or changes to the drafting thing.
Right.
And
so the article by Kylie McDaniel pointed out that the owners might have been okay with a 10-round draft. Because, I mean, in some, I don't think you're even talking about $1 million using last year's.
No, it was like 900,000. It was less than 15 million per team.
Yeah.
Or 15 million total.
Was it that low? I think so. I thought it was like a little under $1 million per team.
It might have been.
That would
no,
be 50K,
but that was
$500K per team.
But that was last year's slotting.
Right.
But
what I'm saying is we're talking $1 million. Yeah, a difference of $1 million. So total, it would be closer to 30, not 15.
Right, but that was if they did full slots for round 6 to 10 from last year. Remember, they were discussing only using half.
No, I'm saying having those versus not having them. I'm not talking about the half slots.
Oh, okay. Well, I was talking about the half slots.
Right.
So
okay.
I was right.
Okay. You're infuriating. No. So that's fair. Anywho, the difference between having a full slotted round 6 to 10 versus no round 6 to 10 is only like $1 million per team.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, the owners probably would have been fine with it. But the problem is when they came in and decided to try and ask for half slots, you can't say like, "Oh, you said no, fine, we'll do full slots." Like,
yeah,
now you just have no backbone.
Well, Kylie basically said I think the owners thought the players would just be like, "Sure, whatever," and the players were like, "No," and then the owners can't turn around and be like, "Well, we wanted this anyway." So
right.
And I think I think front offices are just like, "What the heck are you doing?" Like, it's not that big a deal, and it makes a huge deal for us having 5 more rounds, and I just don't.
Right,
it just sucks. It's so stupid.
Yeah. So what we have now is a 5-round draft. Slots are the same as last year. It's not hard slotting, so you can spread that money around. And any undrafted free agent that a team signs can sign for no more than a $20,000 bonus.
And this one is unlimited. There were earlier reports, I remember, that they were thinking about limiting it, but it's an unlimited number for $20K.
Yeah, for $20K each. And then actually the other thing, too, I think, is the draft bonuses, only $100,000 gets paid this year. The rest of it is deferred.
Yeah, and I think this is an important thing because I can't remember where I read it. It might have been in Jim Callis's article. He basically pointed out that if you're a top prep prospect...
Jim Callis from MLB Pipeline.
Yeah, I believe it was Jim Callis. It might have been J.J. Cooper, though. It was one of the draft experts. Basically pointed out that if you're a top prep prospect, you're only getting $100,000 right now. You can go to school for 2 years, and if the bonuses are back to normal, you might get more or less the same amount of money have it by 2022. Do you know what I mean? Because you're only getting $100,000 this year.
You're not even losing a time value of money, in other words.
Exactly, because you're only getting $100,000 this year. You're getting 50% of what you would have got in 2021 and the other half in 2022 versus in 2022, if you come out, you're getting your whole bonus in 2022.
Yeah, so like if you were going to sign for $1 million this year, just to use a round number.
Yes.
You're getting $100,000 this year, $450,000 next year, and $450,000 in 2022.
Yeah. Oh, actually, do you know what? It's Kylie McDaniel. It's in his article that I'm looking at right now. Okay. Yeah.
So that's how it's spread out. So it's not like you're saying $1 million now versus $1 million in 2022.
No.
Or 23.
The example he uses is there's a prep prospect, Austin Hendrick, who we know because we looked at him for our mock draft exercise.
Yeah, but isn't he the one that's going to be a draft eligible sophomore?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that now.
But he'd get $100,000 this summer and then a couple million each of the next 2 summers. But if he goes to school and gets taken in the same slot, basically the slot number will be higher and there won't be deferrals. So he'll get a bigger bonus paid at this full time at the same time, like the 2020 bonus would just be finishing paying off.
Right.
So it's an interesting situation where like you could have guys betting on themselves. And I think that's going to play, and we'll discuss strategy, I'm sure, a little later. And
So we've got a 5-round draft. The Red Sox only have 4 picks because they lost their second round pick. And actually, Ian, let's get to, I want to say at least one of our emails, if not more, deal with the draft. So let's just hit those now, rather than read them later and say like, oh, we already answered it. MLB draft question from Sammy Hurwitz, Sammy J. Oh no, we this was the heater. We did that one last time, right? Yeah, because he asked me to yell the word heater. He sent it on Monday, May the 4th. Maybe we
didn't because we recorded on the 1st.
All right, so Sammy J sends us an email. Says, "Gents, I'm back again with another heater." He wanted me to yell that part.
Yikes.
Simple question. I haven't looked at the top draft prospects, but what do you guys think is more important? Getting the, quote, best available talent or addressing a weakness in the system? Let's say catcher, for example. Obviously, it would be great to get both, but that's easier said than done. Best Sammy J. Ian, you can do
best
that.
Best available. You take best available. You don't draft for position because it's not like you're drafting for a guy who's going to be playing in the big leagues that year.
Yep.
You always take best available.
Yep, definitely.
Within monetary reasons, of course. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Another email we want to get to now is from our Patreon supporter, Bill Stanton. Bill says, I was really looking forward to the start of the season. I had tickets for games 1 and 2 in Portland. I thought that may be the most interesting team of the Sox affiliates. It was probably going to be. As for the drafts, I think 5 rounds is too few. 10 rounds would have made much more sense. So with only 4 picks in 5 rounds, what might the strategy be? Would the Red Sox take the risk of drafting the highest-rated player, even players that may be considered tough signs, in each round, 3 through 5, with the hopes of signing at least one, giving them 2 high-quality picks, including their first-round selection? Then try to make up for it with good scouting with their undrafted free agent $220,000 signs. Love the podcast. The more of them, the better. Bill Stanton. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I mean, I think there's, like you've been alluding to, Ian, there's going to be a lot of strategery involved here.
Yeah.
For context, I should mention, because this was the first mock draft I had seen, Jim Callis and MLB Pipeline's mock draft came out today. And it was the first that I'd seen that actually linked the Red Sox to the players there. It wasn't just kind of like, they might take this guy here. It was,
right.
There was a guy, and they've also been linked with A and B.
Yeah.
So he had, as many mocks have had now, so I'm wondering if there's fire where this smoke is. Mick Abel, who is, I think, at least he's arguably the top prep pitcher.
Is a top 2 prep pitcher.
Yeah, he's one of
him
2.
Him and Jared Kelly from Texas are the 2 top guys.
And is Abel the guy at Harvard Westlake? No, Harvard Westlake is...
that's Peter Crow Armstrong, the outfield. Abel's the guy out in Oregon.
Oregon, right. That's right. Abel, who was there and we decided not to pick, but with good reason, in the mock draft. But he said the Red Sox, in addition to Abel, have been linked to Pete Crow Armstrong, the outfielder from Harvard Westlake in the Los Angeles area. I don't know if it's LA in particular. As well as, who was the other one? Ed Howard, the shortstop, who we were also considering at number 17.
Yes.
So 3 prep players.
But doesn't he have them taking a college guy?
No, he has them taking Abel.
Oh, he does? Yeah. Oh, one of the mocks had them taking a college pitcher from Miami.
Crochet. Oh, no, I thought, that wasn't Callis's.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's BPA round 1, but you had a strategy that you thought they might do.
I wouldn't be surprised. So you're in a situation where they only have 4 million. They have their pool number is 5.1, a little over 5.1 million.
Okay. And
it's the fifth lowest of any team. And I was just doing some numbers. I kind of mentioned this on Twitter a few days ago, but in the last year, they signed 24 guys for more than $20,000. Mm-hmm. The year before, I think it was 20, and then the year before that, it was 26, and that included 2 undrafted free agents. So you're looking at a drop from 20 to 25 players you would get for over $20K to 4. And that made me wonder, is it worth putting all your eggs in one basket? And could it potentially make more sense to sign 2 guys for $2 million and 2 guys for $500K, or 4 guys for $1 to $1.5 million? Because based on everything, all the articles just kind of discussing the effects of the draft, it seems that teams are in enough financial trouble or willing to say that there's going to be a lot of signability picks in the early rounds, and it's going to push down some prep guys, and it's going to push down some more expensive guys who have leverage. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you even saw in like Kylie McDaniel's article, he speculated that teams are just going to punt on their first round pick in order to get a second pick next year.
Yeah,
they don't want to pay the bonus because they basically are looking at it that even the $100,000, that's enough to keep 2 baseball ops employees in their job for the summer or for the year. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the Red Sox decide to do, because their first pick is worth $3.6 million. Their next one's worth $667,000. So there's a huge drop off there. Yeah. So if they go under slot with that one, they have a lot of money to play with. But if they don't, they go full slot. You're not getting a lot of, you're not going to be able to move a lot of money around with those last 3 picks.
But here's the thing, right? Is that so the Red Sox, what they usually do is in like the 9th and 10th round, they take guys. I don't think they didn't really do this last year because the only senior they took was Scott, right?
No, but they took under slot guys a lot because they didn't have to because Cameron Cannon signed for $400,000 under slot.
Right, and that's kind of like it's just where are you going to save that money to reallocate, and how are you going to reallocate?
I mean, if you look over it, in every year the Red Sox have had either one of their top 3 picks be significantly under slot, or their 9th and 10th round picks for sure, and often even the 8th round for like $5,000 or less, which saves around like $400,000.
Among those 3 picks.
Yes, correct. They try to save, it seems, about $400,000 to $500,000 between those top 10 round picks.
Okay,
and that's pretty consistent, that number every year. So,
and I think it's going to be a combination of what's there at 17.
Yes, that's I think the biggest thing, and I think we'll have a clear idea of what they're going to do after 17.
Yeah.
Because if they go high school, it's going to be probably close to slot. But if they go like a college pitcher that's ranked in like the 30s on a lot of lists, they have a deal for that guy for probably like $1.5 million, and then they're going to move money around.
And here's the thing too, though, is that like everyone's saying that even all the college guys even have leverage this year.
They don't. I don't.
Quibble. They don't.
This is why I
do? Go back to school next year in an enormous draft class.
Yeah.
Not even knowing what next year's draft is going to look like.
Or if there's going to be like college baseball.
Right.
You genuinely have no idea what's going to happen, because if college football gets canceled, college baseball's in big trouble.
Because schools aren't going to have money.
I hate to be like a downer about this, but as someone who went to a big school and has done a lot.
Where?
But as someone who is very keen into college athletics, and like college baseball doesn't make any money for 99% of the programs. They're funded by the college football program. It's just how the economics of college athletics work. It's not fair. Yeah. But it's mostly football. And it's not fair. It's not a good system, but that is how the system works. And college football is supposed to start up in August.
Right.
College baseball doesn't start until next spring. If there's no college football, which we've already seen a lot of schools, like I think the University of California system schools have said they're going online for the fall semester for sure.
You can't have college football if you're
at virtual school. If you're online. Yeah. So, and you're not going to see, like, if USC isn't playing, like, I have a hard time believing that there's going to be college football, for example, just as a UC or Cal Berkeley or whatever.
Right.
So it just creates this system where, is there even going to be money for college baseball? Are there going to be teams folding because they can't afford it? Like, college baseball is just it's so far away, but at the same time, there are so many questions that it creates this system where you're just going to have too many players. And like the way college baseball works, they only have 11.9 scholarships to give out across, what is it, like a 40-man roster, about 35 to 40?
No, it's not that many.
How many is it? I'm going to go
30, I think. But anyway.
Whatever, let's say it's 30 people. No one gets a full scholarship. The most people are getting is like half, and that's like the top players.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a situation where for a lot of these players, they have to choose, like, do I go back to school where we're paying for my tuition? It's not like we're getting it paid for. It's not like I'm on full scholarship or anything. So it's coming out of pocket by either me or my parents. Do I go back to school for a year where we don't know if we're going to play? Or do I take, a few $100,000 under slot and just go into pro ball, and at least I'm guaranteed an income? That's a decision a lot of people are going to face. And I think that's why, if you're a college player, especially the juniors, you're not in a good situation. You just don't have leverage, because your leverage is to go back to school. But at a lot of the big schools, they have high-end freshmen who are coming to take your place. They banked on your scholarship. They banked on you not being there. Are you going to transfer? Like, it just, there's a lot of uncertainty. And it's why I think that for $20,000, I would not be surprised to see some teams get guys who are like significant, reasonably high ranked on like the BA 500, the perfect game 500. Like there are going to be guys who take $20,000 because that's all they can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I was listening to recently into The Athletic has a Red Sox podcast that is hosted by, I think, Tim McMaster. And then there's a rotating set of co-hosts, Jen McCaffrey, Steve Buckley, Lars Anderson is actually another one. And they had an episode recently with Matt, I forget if it's pronounced Pear or Perry, but the guy that's like the homeless minor leaguer. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his videos. He's kind of funny. Anyway, they were talking about, the realities of kind of minor league baseball. I guess his family was Lars's host family when he was in Portland. Was also kind of funny. So anyway, this guy, he went to BC and got drafted and was a minor leaguer for a while. And he was talking about how, when you look at the situation happening at a lot of schools, he went and played at BC. He picked BC in part because Tony Sanchez, who folks may remember, who was a top pick out of BC, was leaving. Like he got drafted as a junior.
He was the fourth overall pick by the Pirates.
Right, yeah. I knew he was a top 5 pick. I couldn't remember where. Thank you. If Tony Sanchez had not signed and come back, he would have had to really think hard about whether he wanted to go to BC, because part of what made BC attractive is he was going to play right away, or at least compete to play right away.
Well, and that's why I think the schools that are going to benefit the most from this are junior colleges, because junior colleges are going to have the high school seniors who they don't really want to go to college, but they basically are forced to go for a year, or they don't want to go for 3 years, but they'll go for a year, or a school basically processes them out because we don't have room for you for that. Or they decide, well, the college junior ahead of me is not leaving. I'm not going to play. I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, they're going to get a ton of transfers too, because if you're like a college freshman who the senior or junior ahead of you uses a 6th year of eligibility, you're just going to be like, well, I'm not waiting around. I'm going to go there for a year rather than have to sit out a year. And then, so I think that we're going to see, that's why I think next year's draft is just going to be, as you said, is going to be very interesting. The next couple of years drafts are going to be much deeper because of this situation. Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate.
Potentially. Yeah. And I mean, dude, the team to see next spring, if college baseball is happening, it's probably not going to be Vandy. It's going to be like San Jac.
It's going to be like San Jacinto State or something, or one of the Texas JUCOs.
San Jac's the one I was thinking of.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think there's a California one that's really good too.
Yeah, there's a few. There's the ones that are like, there's like a Seminole State in Oklahoma and a Seminole State in Florida. They're always pretty good. I think the one in Oklahoma is where Teddy Stankiewicz went.
Yeah, correct. It's like schools like that are going to benefit. And the other thing is they don't have like the overhead that 4-year colleges do.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how this works.
It's going to be, the draft is going to be fascinating. The Red Sox strategy is going to be fascinating. Mm-hmm. And then the whole, the undrafted free agent thing is going to be a free for all. Yeah. You're going to have it's going to come down to how good are the relationships your scouts have built with the prospects, which they haven't been able to because they didn't have the spring year for the most part. So it's going to go back further than that.
Quibble.
I mean, they have built relationships, but this spring year is when a lot of them develop their relationships with the scouts, with the players, because you think about it, they had the no contact rule, so it wasn't like they could be continuing to reach out to them and do stuff with them, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but that's like you said. I think it's a question of who's been doing their homework. Because we say this, on the forum and on Twitter and stuff. Scouting for the 2020 draft did not start in February.
No, we talked about when Mike Rickard was on a couple.
I mean, they start the second the previous year's draft ends, and that's a great callback, Ian, to the Mike Rickard episode.
Well, he also says that when you're at games, if you see someone who stands out, and you'll mark them down, or you'll take note, even if they're not for the next year or two.
Yeah, you're not ignoring the freshmen. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so it's going to come down to are we going to see teams, and this is where I think the Red Sox might have an advantage, is I have a feeling they're going to be willing to throw around the money there in terms of number of players.
Yeah.
And if you're a prospect who is pretty good and probably would have been drafted, the one I was thinking of is if you're Jarrod Duran.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. That's who I went back to as well.
Jarrod Duran was the Red Sox 7th round pick in 2018. He signed for $179,000, which was slot. Does he go back to school for a senior year at Long Beach State, or does he sign for $20K? I think he signs for $20K.
Yeah, that's exactly who I went to in my head too. I'm
and
really
so
glad you went there.
like the Red Sox have had a good history of drafting in rounds, like giving guys like 100,000 or less, like or even 150,000 or less. Like, you know, you go back. I'm thinking of what's his name? There was Duran, Ben Taylor, Brandon Howlett. Yeah, Steven Scott last year, Brandon Howlett.
Well, Howlett got a little bit over Slot, but I mean, he was a high school guy.
But he got 135,000.
Yeah, but he was a high school guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
he has more leverage. But even, you know, last year, like, yeah, Steven Scott for $50K or Cody Scroggins for $100K, or like Will Dalton is, I think, a good example. He was rated 389 by BA, 232 by Perfect Game. He signed for 135,000. Is he going to turn down $20K and go back to Florida? I'm not sure.
No, probably not.
Like. So,
you know, Zach Skellinger in this 2017 draft, 6th round, signed for $175K, where Slot was $230K, right?
Exactly.
This year's draft, he doesn't get drafted because he was a 6th round pick. You know, he's a junior who had an injury-plagued junior year. Well, maybe because of the injury he goes back to school, but maybe he just wants to get into into pro ball and work with pro coaching. He's at Seton Hall. It's not Vandy. You know?
Exactly. And so I think I'm just like looking back, you know, all the guys they signed like for $100K or so, they're probably going to take $20K, and it's about finding the right guys. And I think one selling point that the Red Sox will have is, look at our system. It's not that good a system. Yeah. And there is opportunity here.
And the other thing too, that Kylie McDaniel brings up in his article, I think, Ian, is one way you wonder, there is nothing that keeps teams from paying minor leaguers more than other teams. And I think he mentions this is, you know, some teams this might have been a JJ Cooper thing.
No, it wasn't Kylie McDaniel, because he said
it was JJ Cooper on the BA podcast. No, not on the podcast. I know I read this. Maybe it was JJ Cooper. Okay. Oh yeah, it was Baseball America. I don't know if it was JJ Cooper or if it was Josh Norris, but there's nothing that keeps different major league teams from paying minor leaguers more than other teams. So, for example, the Blue Jays last year announced that they were increasing minor league salaries by 50%. Right?
Yeah.
Teams with the money could easily... Now, if Major League Baseball thought you were doing this to circumvent...
Well, that's the issue you'd have to run into, because I was on the Over the Monster podcast this week, and they had an emailer ask them, do you think... Is there anything stopping basically signing someone for $20K and then giving them another $100,000 the following offseason? And yes, that's very against the rules. And I have a feeling it will be monitored very strictly.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But it's like, so that's a fair question of like, would a team announce that it is increasing minor league salaries? I've thought this was something for a while teams should do to entice, look, we're going to pay you a lower bonus, but you're going to make more over the long run because we're not paying you what a guy in, system B is making. We're going to pay you, twice that.
It's a very good question. And I do think it's something where the Red Sox, because we know they have the money, could potentially use the leverage.
I think it wouldn't surprise me. Go ahead. I
was going to say, I wonder if more baseball would basically tell their teams they can't do that.
Don't do that this year. Look, it's not fair to other owners who are going to be taking a beating.
But I think the way they will have the advantage, though, is I think they, let's say the Red Sox signed 10 guys for $20,000. That's $200,000. There will be some teams that won't do that.
Yep. No, that's true.
That's who you're competing against. It's going to be the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers. Teams like that are going to be the ones who are going out and competing for those guys. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, and then it'll come down to fit, relationships, etc.
Right. So, yeah. All right. Well, that's the draft. I think that's basically it on that, Ian.
There's going to be a lot of draft talk because it's less than a month away now. It's June 10th.
Right.
So we're going to probably over the next couple of weeks have a lot of draft talk. Maybe a guest if we can.
Yeah, maybe looking to getting a guest.
And I think our first kind of foray into the draft was last week. We participated in the Prospects Live.
That's true. We have to talk about this. Yeah, the Prospects Live draft. They did a full 3-round mock using the actual rounds 1 to 3, including supplemental picks. We didn't have a second rounder because we were drafting for the Red Sox, which was both frustrating and is actually a little bit nice because we used the hour break we had to go hang out with our with the Wags. But yeah, we went on. It was pretty fun. We, did our draft board ahead of time. Really kind of looked at what we wanted to do. Discussed some strategy. I think we generally, Ian, were looking at BPA, but I think to some degree we did have a bit of a strategy. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, one sec. I'm just trying to bring up our list.
Well, I'll talk about it generally.
Yeah, do you want to just get going while I bring this stuff up?
We felt that one of the strengths in this year's draft was college pitching.
Correct.
And we said, all right, looking at the guys who are in our range at pick 17, you've got some high school guys, you've got some college guys.
Correct.
There's a difference between the college pitcher we're going to get at 17 and the guy we're going to get in the third round at pick, what the hell is it, 99 or something?
It's, 89.
89. There's a difference, but how much of a difference is it versus perhaps a high upside guy there?
Correct.
Let's see how the board falls. And I don't know if you want to give the actual kind of board we had, because you figure there's certain guys like we knew we're not getting Torkelson. We knew we're not getting Austin Martin.
Exactly. We basically crossed off 2, 4, 6, 8, like 10 guys, and we just didn't think there was any chance they would fall. And ironically, one of them did.
Yeah, right.
But there were 10 guys that we just didn't think were realistic, and they were the obvious names, as Chris said: Torkelson, Martin, Asa Lacy, Emerson Hancock. The guys who have been, if you're looking at all the mock drafts that are coming out now, they're all going in the top 10.
Yep.
And so that kind of left us in a position where we identified around, at first it was 10 guys, and then we narrowed it down to 6 because we basically looked at what was realistic and did some research into them, watched some video, and just kind of came away with 6 guys that we liked at our pick, and we were pretty confident one of them would get there. And I think we ended up having to choose from all but one of them.
I think all but one of them were there, I think, because what's his name wasn't there, the outfielder. Kerstad, yep.
But so basically it ended up being that our kind of top 6 that we thought was realistic was our number 1 guy was Heston Kerstad, who was the outfielder from Arkansas, and I think he went in the top 10 anyway.
Yeah, but we figured, hey, they've had success with. No, it wasn't just because he's in Arkansas.
No, it was just it was a combination of best player available and fit. Because we'll kind of talk about it a little later, but with the outfield, the way it's set up right now, they do need some guys there.
Yep.
And he would someone who could immediately jump in and be, potentially one of the top. He'd be around the top outfield prospect in the system. He'd definitely be in that range with Gilberto Jimenez and Jarrod Duran, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And he ticked a lot of boxes, as you said. He was a big college guy. I'm sure they scouted him heavily in the SEC. He was on Team USA, performed well this year in the college season when they played, and he just was someone interesting. But in all the mocks we've seen, he's not getting to the Red Sox. No. So we kind of pivoted, and our second choice was another outfielder, but he was a high schooler. Robert Hassel III from Independence, Tennessee. And he was kind of
Independence High School. I don't know if that's
Independence High School. Yeah. And he was kind of the guy we really wanted. Yeah. We didn't think Kerstad was going to be there. So Hassel was kind of our top guy.
Go ahead. Sorry.
He was, him, Austin Hendrick, and Zach Veen are kind of the top 3 prep outfielders, with Veen, I think, a tier above the other guys.
Veen wasn't going to be there.
And we didn't think Hendrick was going to be there either. And Hassel ticks a lot of boxes, Team USA, and he just kind of seems like a Red Sox pick. He's from an area where Danny Watkins is from, and he's a Red Sox area scout there, and he's someone they trust heavily, and they've invested a lot of money on Danny Watkins picks, and he's had some really big hits. I mean, There's one outfielder from Tennessee, I think, that a lot of people are familiar with. Well, he was a second baseman when he was drafted, who's turned out all right. But he's
on the Dodgers now, whatever.
Yeah. We just liked the sound. We just liked everything we read about Hassel, and that was kind of our second guy and who we ended up getting. But now, of course, all the mock drafts you're reading have him going in the top 10. So it doesn't seem like that's realistic either.
I feel validated. I don't know about you.
I thought we were right, and now everything coming out is everyone's like, yeah, this guy's really good. We're going to take him. Like, he's not getting past, I think it was 14 or something.
The best part is that apparently the other thing that came out right after this mock draft was that he apparently played in consecutive College World Series.
Yeah, he's like a legend, like a Little League legend. No, Little League World Series, not College World Series.
Oh, I meant Little League. Sorry. Yes, Little League World Series. Like, legend. Like he had big home runs in both of them. And like, if you look at his video from like the second year he's there, I like the swing.
Yeah, it's the same swing if you watch his high school video.
Yeah, it's like, all right, that swing will play. Like,
yeah, and I think we'll probably
leverage.
I think we can get more detailed into the players in future episodes. Yeah. But then our third choice was our third pref player was Tyler Soderstrom. He's a high school catcher from California. And basically what we saw here is his biggest question mark is defensively, and everyone thinks he can hit though. And we kind of like that because if he hits, you'll figure out where he plays. And if auto umps are coming, which let's be honest, they probably are at some point, that doesn't matter if he can catch or not. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter if he can frame or not.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it lowers the bar there. So if he can hit, and as we discussed on the last episode, catcher is a big question in the system. So if he was there, he was someone we'd be interested in, especially because his range was right around where we were picking.
Yep.
Similarly, Patrick Bailey, the top college catcher, was also on our list. He was the next guy. And we put him a little lower just because he doesn't even seem to have as much upside as someone like Soderstrom did. Mm-hmm. He was kind of a little safer, a little closer to the big leagues, but we were kind of looking for more of an impact guy at 17 because let's be honest, the Red Sox don't pick in the top 20 very often, and when they do, you got to get an impact guy, in my opinion.
And just to kind of interject really quick, Ian, the other thing we did look at too is kind of demographics.
Yes.
That the Red Sox have been known to favor. For example, having played for Team USA, having played on the Cape. Hassel in particular raked with Team USA. Tristan Casas is a guy who raked for Team USA in the past. So that this is something they do look at. Soderstrom, Team USA 18U. Bailey, both 2019 Team USA collegiate squad and played on the Cape in 2018.
Yep.
The guy, I think everyone...
And then I think
was on our pref list in the top 5, either had played Team USA, and then the college guys, except for Kierstead, had played on the Cape.
Correct. No, yes, correct. And then I think the last guy was the only pitcher who made our list, and he was Garrett Crochet, lefty from Tennessee. And I think that was kind of like the upside play because he was someone who seems, if he was healthy, would be like a top 5, top 10 discussion.
Yeah, 6'6", 218 lefty.
But he's just had injury concerns. But the Red Sox love their big left-handed pitchers, and they're not afraid to take. I mean, I'm kind of looking at the Rays drafts too. Like last year, they took Shane McClanahan at 33, and he was seen as like a top college lefty, but he had injury issues and fell.
Yep.
And so it kind of seemed to fit the mold of both a Red Sox pick and Chaim Bloom / Rays pick. I don't know how involved he was with the draft, but I know he was involved with their pitching a lot. He was someone who did a lot with their pitching. So he, I'm sure, had some sort of input or was involved with that in some capacity. So he seemed like a good fit. And he was really the only pitcher we were interested in. We kind of ruled out the other high school arms.
Cavalli, no high school arms. And the thing is, go ahead.
There's one high school arm we didn't think we were going to get, and he actually was there. But after going through the Jay Groom experience, I'm just not sure a high school prep arm is the safest thing or something the Red Sox would be that interested in, especially in a draft where they can only have 4 picks.
And between that and what we read about Hassel, I just liked Hassel better.
I agree. So
that's if you're looking in these mocks.
If you look at all the mocks, Hassel's above Abel. So that was kind of our thought process there, and I think that kind of played into our 3rd round pick when we came back on the board a little while later. And we were just kind of thinking we want to get a college pitcher. And this was the range where there are a ton of college pitching.
So when Ian did we start working on a pref list there? I think it was like when there were 10 picks.
Yeah, there were like 10 picks before.
Maybe fewer. When we started talking about it at 10 and we started making the list when there were like 7 picks.
Yeah, so, and pretty much everyone in that range was like a college pitcher.
And everyone we were looking at was available.
Yep. And the reason we ended up going with our top option, actually, ironically, was Jeff Criswell out of the University of Michigan. And he ticks way too many boxes for the Red Sox not to be interested in him in real life because he's a Team USA guy. he was a reliever early on college and converted to starting. So he's got low mileage on his arm, and that's something the Red Sox have drafted before. Mm-hmm. The guys who convert while they're in college.
Or don't convert while they're in college. Look at Thaddeus Ward.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or guys, but Jake Thompson's an example.
Yep.
Thad Ward. I believe Chris Murphy was a reliever his first year. Chris McAmer was another example. Mm-hmm. They just love those guys who are the more low mileage arm. And then he also fits the boxes of just his build. 6'4", 225, big righty, power fastball, good slider. Changeup needs work, but as we saw last year with Lowell, the Red Sox are very confident in their ability to develop changeups with pitching. They did it with Ryan Zephyr-John, Chris Murphy, Noah Song, Aldo Ramirez last year. Like all those guys showed up with Ramirez had a better changeup, but the first three showed up with not the greatest changeups in Lowell and left with the changeups arguably being one of their better secondary pitches. So we thought that was something they could work on, and he actually was kind of mock-wise higher than our pick because we picked at 89, and MLB has him at 58, BA 53, perfect game 65. So we were really happy with that, and I think we're going to see the Red Sox try to diversify with those 4 picks. I think we're going to see, go, a 2-2 split with high school and college, or do something to kind of complement it because you're knowing that those are the 4 best, but maybe not. I don't know.
If the first pick is a high schooler, I could see them doing something like what they did last year where 3, 4, 5 were all college guys. I could see it. Like we talked about, it depends what's there.
Exactly.
If you get, look at some of kind of the lower rated high school guys, like if another high school arm, especially if you go college in the first round, maybe you go a little less risk averse in rounds 3 to 5. Do you take, guys who fall? Who knows?
Yeah, some high school guys who will sign for like $750,000 to $1 million.
Yeah, and do they do something that I think the Kylie McDaniel article talked about is like with their 5th round pick, do they call, 5 different guys and say, hey, we got $25K or $30K.
Well, but if
first
that was
guy
the case,
that takes it, we're picking.
That would have meant that they went big on one of the other picks in addition.
Yeah, the big or just slightly over slot.
Yeah, it meant they went over slot somewhere. But
right. But I'm saying like if you go in the first round and you don't get an under slot guy.
Yeah, you go slot there, and then in the second round
you go slot there. You don't have a second rounder, so 3 and 4 if you go with guys that might need over slot.
Well, especially because like you could get $1 million guy in the 3rd round if you give the 5th round pick $25K. And the thing is, that's where like he was someone we didn't draft, but I'm thinking of like Landon Knack is an example of someone I could see that happening with. He's a college pitcher at some small school. I don't remember where. But his East Tennessee State, and he's mocked, or he's in the rankings around like the 100 to 120 spot. Mm-hmm. And he's someone who is a 5th year junior right now. He's 22 years old already, and he had a crazy good college year. I think he walked like one guy and struck out something like 70 in 50 innings or something. He was in MLB.com's like best tools in the draft.
Yeah. Yep.
But he strikes me as someone who he has no leverage. He's at East Tennessee State. He's someone who's not going to get slot. So if he comes back, or he might be a 5th year senior. If he's going to go, someone they could maybe get under slot. But yeah, anyway, the draft's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And as I alluded to, we'll be discussing it, I'm sure, over the next month leading up to it.
For sure. Yeah. So we'll leave the draft stuff there for now.
One more thing, on my Twitter, or I don't know if we'll link it, but there is video of us. Chris and I went on the Prospects live stream to discuss our picks in our matching quarter zips. And so if you want to watch that, maybe we'll link the video in the description, or we can, if you go on my Twitter, I have the video embedded, and then I mentioned what time we were on, if you want to check that out. Yeah. So we were on for about, I think, 8 to 10 minutes discussing overall between the 2 picks, so you can check it out there.
Yeah, well, I think we were the only pair on there. I think we were the only team. So I figure 2 heads are better than 1.
Exactly.
All right. Well, moving along, right when I put some damn hand cream on, because from washing my hands, my skin is falling off. I guess we can really quickly touch on the negotiations, Ian, on getting the season started. We shouldn't belabor the point. We'll just do a couple minutes.
There's not a lot to say that hasn't been said.
Yeah, well, for those who haven't been paying attention, it's the players and owners are negotiating right now. The first thing on the table is safety, which as it should be. I was really very happy to see that.
I was happy that on Tuesday that's all they discussed, it seems, health and safety. And Rob Manfred, breaking news, was on CNN tonight outlining their testing plans and everything.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that they're going to test everybody.
They're testing multiple times a week. They're creating their own lab to test, which I like this. This is very smart because then we're not taking away like public space or whatever. Mm-hmm. We're not using the resources of the public to process our tests.
Right.
So they're helping convert a facility in Utah into a lab, and the return time. There's some questions and definitely some things that need to be ironed out. Like the return time on the test is 24 hours. So if a guy gets tested in 24 hours later, they get the results. Like,
do you quarantine everyone that played in that game?
Exactly. Like, how does it work? I don't know. So, but
no spitting.
Yeah. But it's going to be the most important thing is the health, obviously. And then I think the other controversial topic, which we briefly mentioned on the outset, is going to be
money.
Player salaries.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you feel. I think the hardest part is we need to remember, like, I think both parties have their merits. And I think the problem that the MLB is running into is that not all owners are equal in the sense that like teams like the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers can probably afford to are still going to make money even if there's no fans in the stands. But there might be 3 or 4 teams that are not. And those owners have just as much say as the owners from those other teams do. And if those owners are like, we're not playing if, we don't change these, we're taking a loss, we're not playing, then it puts Rob Manfred in a bad position, and it puts the MLB negotiating people in a bad position. And I think that's kind of the problem they're running into, because I'm sure there are a lot of owners that would be happy to just abide or follow through with we'll give you a prorated version of your salary, but obviously some are not. So that's kind of, I think, the impasse we're at is, and I hope they're able to bridge that gap, but we shall see.
Yeah. The money piece is tough. I mean, maybe I've just curated my Twitter feed well, but my Twitter feed is just people outraged at everyone who's saying the players are being greedy, but I'm not seeing anyone who's saying the players are being greedy by turning down
I don't think
revenue split.
I don't think they're being greedy. I think they're
definitely not. No.
I think asking for a prorated version of their salary is well within their rights. And that's what they thought they were agreeing to. And it's a tough situation. I mean, as we kind of mentioned earlier, like all businesses are going to take years where they don't make as much revenue or might take a loss. That's just how it works. But baseball made so much money and has made so much money every year that like change the revenue sharing to figure something out to make these 2, 3, 4 teams, however many there are that are potentially in trouble. I just don't think MLB is going to, like, we're not going to play because a couple teams are holding out. They'll find some way to get creative with the accounting.
Yeah.
And
you revenue share more for a year. I mean, that's
because like we mentioned, like the problem is we don't know the financials of teams. Mm-hmm. The only team that's publicly traded is the Braves, and I believe they made $430 million last year. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like these teams are cash strapped for the most part,
right?
And so
right. So I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I really hope they work it out. I want to see baseball this year.
Yeah, because it seems like there's a lot more details. Like, I mean, we should probably mention
the taxi squad plan.
The kind of the outline of the plan would be spring training would start up in mid-June. The regular season aim would be to start around July 4th, I believe, or July 1st. And teams would either play in their home stadiums or if they can't play in their parks. So like the California teams obviously can't play in their places. The New York teams are probably not going to be able to.
The Blue Jays go over the border? Probably
exactly.
Not.
They would play in their spring training facilities, I believe, or they would find an alternative venue, whatever that means.
Well, I could see like the Blue Jays playing in like Buffalo or something, right? Like you just you take over a AAA park until your major league park is ready.
Exactly, but then the league would change a little bit. It would be 3. The AL East and the NL East would be combined. The AL West and the NL West would be combined, and the 2 central divisions would be combined into 3 10-team divisions, right? Is it 10?
And that's, because there's 30 teams.
Yeah, so it's 3 10-team divisions. There's no AL and NL, I believe. It's just the top, what is it, the top team in each. No,
I didn't see it. Couldn't be the top team.
I believe it's the top 2 records get a bye. Then it's the winners of each division plus the 2 wild cards or something. So it's 12 teams. I don't remember. It's like 10 teams make the playoffs or 14 teams make the playoffs. DH, and there's all DH, obviously.
Universal DH. Yep.
Universal DH, and you would only play the teams in your little bracket.
You wouldn't. There would be no.
Which makes sense.
Would not travel.
So
west of.
Well. What? Pittsburgh? No, Pittsburgh's
in the Central. That's where I was thinking, but it's just, I mean, they basically wouldn't leave the Atlantic seaboard.
Yeah. So that would kind of how it would work. And as I think baseball like that is better. I know I've seen some people complain it's too gimmicky. I don't want to play if it's gimmicky. Get out of here.
I'm excited about it, man. Give me something different.
It'd be fun. And I just think the idea of an 82 game sprint would be fascinating. Yeah. Like the strategy where you can't throw away a game there. Like, in 162 games, the Red Sox even did it last year. They'll throw a bullpen game where it's just like, they're not trying to win tonight.
Yeah.
You can't do that in like a 80.
The day after, cross country flight.
Where they just call the guy up from AAA and he's eating this. He's going 6 innings or 5 innings, regardless of how many runs he gives up.
Yeah.
Like in this 82 games, anything can happen. I mean, if you look at the standings after like 82 games last year, I think the Nationals wouldn't have even been in the playoffs.
No, they would have, but they would have been the second wild card.
Okay, exactly. So it's just so much can change in that time, and it's just I think it'd be really interesting that, and then the roster construction aspect of it.
I like this a lot. Let me take this.
Yeah, you want to take that one? Yeah.
So what would happen is there would be a 30-man active roster, and the teams would also have a 20-man taxi squad that was also where the team is, right? So when training camps opened back up, you would have these 50 players.
Correct.
And from that, you would draw a 30-man active roster. There are questions that are unanswered.
Yeah, service time I have no idea what's going to happen with that in this situation.
Well, I think service time is if you're on the 30-man roster. That seems pretty simple to me. Why would service time accrue if you're on the taxi squad? That's like accruing service time because you're in AAA.
But in terms of like 40-man status, like
40-man status doesn't accrue service.
I guess it doesn't matter.
It's just if you're on the active roster. There would still presumably be a 40-man roster that for 40-man roster things like, major league minimums and things like that.
Well, but that's what I mean. Like, but for like the guys, because at least 10 guys on the taxi squad would not be on the 40-man roster.
Yes.
Like, what happens there though? Like,
I think they're still just minor leaguers.
They don't get. Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
Just minor leaguers who are up there because the alternative, because again, remember, I hate to say it, there's probably no minor league season happening. So they're either there or in Florida/Arizona. And who knows when those are going to start back up. Like we were talking about, that probably doesn't happen till August, right? Like that's probably not happening until August comes around and it's just going to be like an extended fall instructional league this year. If Major League Baseball is starting back up in July, you probably want your guys up there, right?
Yeah.
Like you want your Bobby Dahlbeck there rather than in Florida waiting. You want, maybe you call up a Jarrod Duran for the taxi squad, at least until that happens. And then maybe in August, you're like, okay, you know what? We're not going to need this guy. Send him to Florida. Get us another
pitcher or something.
Journeyman 4A pitcher to throw BP to Bobby Dahlbeck and to be another guy. Because I think what's going to happen is the back end of the pitching staff is going to be churning.
Well, that's the thing. I think obviously Chaim Bloom and the Red Sox front office didn't prepare for something like this, but the way they've constructed their 40-man rosters worked out well because they have so many of those fungible relievers that when they expand to 30, they have plenty of bullpen guys that they could stick in the back end there who are serviceable. And then they have other options should someone, be struggling and they can churn off the roster.
Yep.
So,
and they've got 3 catchers already. They don't have to call up once in 10.
I think we should save the 30-man discussion for the next.
Yeah, we're not going to do it now, but it's an interesting discussion to have because there are a couple of spots that it's a really, both for the 30-man roster and for on the taxi squad. We won't get into it, but
definitely.
Do you put Rusney Castillo on the taxi squad?
No.
Would you call him up? You know what I mean? Even if you're not going to call him up, is it worth having him there? Rusney Castillo is one of the 50 best players in the system.
Yes.
Right now, not saying prospect wise, but talent, true talent. He is probably one of the top 50
and also something do you decide, all right, well, since minor leagues isn't going to get started, like, do you put Tristan Casas on the 50 man just to have him getting constant at bats?
Yeah. And then you get to the question too, is can only the 50 guys be up there?
Exactly.
Can Tristan Casas be there and not be on the taxi?
I think probably a better example is Jeter Downs. Like, is Jeter Downs, because he would have started in Portland, is Jeter Downs on the taxi squad, or is he allowed to work out with them? Like, how does that work?
Yep.
Like, things like that are just very interesting.
Yeah, so that's why we can't talk about this yet, because we just don't know enough.
No, and I think this will be a good discussion once we have the specifics of the proposal, because we have like the outline, but we need like the nitty gritty details, and that's, I think, stuff they're probably still figuring out, frankly.
Oh, probably, yeah. That's what they're going to eventually negotiate that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
the players are going to want to have a say too. It's like, do they want more than 50 guys to have to do that in July?
Well, yeah, but I think for the players union though, like something like universal DH is good for them. That's 15 more jobs for hitters.
Yep.
Like 30-man active roster is good. That's more major league players. That's always good.
Yep.
And I think the one thing the Red Sox actually are in pretty good shape for is with a 30-man, they have some guys like the Yairo Muñoz signing looks like genius now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, the fact that they did that right before things shut down too.
Yeah. Like someone like him is like the perfect guy for your 30th spot.
Yeah. Yeah. On a 30-man roster. That's great. Yeah.
Exactly. So I just think that'll be, and I think the other thing that with the 30-man for me is like Jonathan Arauz is a lock. Like
Jonathan Arauz is going there.
You keep Jonathan Arauz now. You can keep him now is my point. Like there's no question.
Yeah,
there's no question.
I think they might have anyway.
I agree, but it just like now solidifies.
And
but
you almost wonder so. I mean, keep in mind too. This is interesting. I mean, I guess in an 82 game season, you're still going to go for 90 days, right? But like, do they change the Rule 5 rules, or does this wind up being a windfall? Well,
exactly. Or how does is service time just prorated, or how does that work? Like, I don't know. It's just going to be very interesting.
Yep. I'm really looking forward to them hopefully working things out, and I want to see how this is going to play out, because this kind of thing is just kind of like when Mike started texting me about this, I was just kind of like, he and I are going to geek out over making the
lawyerness of you is going to love reading this stuff, like figuring it out.
Well, that, and it's also Mike and I both have very logical, like ordered pattern, thinking styles, and this just, we debate the rosters page and the projections ad nauseum because we just get off on that kind of thing. So
yeah, I just kind of think to wrap this up though, just circling back that at the end of the day though, the most important thing is there needs to be a concise health and safety plan, because first and foremost, the health and safety of the players, the front office, but also going down the people who are going to have to be working at the stadium when they're playing games, the bus drivers, any and all people involved in any capacity, whether it be going from the players all the way down to the cooks in the club for the clubhouse food.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, Christian Vasquez isn't cooking for the entire team. They're not rotating who's cooking dinner that day.
It's not going to be when you're playing soccer and kindergarten someone's bringing a slice of orange each week. That's not how it works. Everyone is going to need to be protected, and that's a huge number of people. And before anything can get going, there needs to be a good plan for that. It seems like baseball and the Players Association, the fact that they started off with that instead of the money is I like that, and I think it's a good sign. But if they can figure that out, that's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, these are all people, and they deserve to be able to work in safe conditions. And if I don't want to watch a sport, or I don't want players to feel like they're being forced to go back and work in unsafe conditions. That's not what we want. So
nor should anyone.
Nor should they have to. And that's why, if and when it gets announced, if some players say they don't want to play, that's perfectly within their right. I don't see any issue with that.
Nope.
So, but I just think that's the most important thing. And then we'll figure out the rest after that.
Yep. Let's really quick, Ian. We'll go to state of the system. Let's just do the outfielders.
Yeah, that's the only one we have left for now.
Well, yeah, but we don't want to get into the ordering thing.
No, we'll discuss that on the next one.
Yeah. We ran the state of the system outfielders piece on the news page. That's news.soxprospects.com. That went up yesterday. That's Wednesday the 13th. Ian, this was another really interesting one to me. This was another thing that really surprised me. When you think of outfielders in the Red Sox system, obviously, we were talking about acquired from July 2, 2013 onward. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the top of mind is Andrew Benintendi.
Correct.
That's why his photo is atop the article.
Mm-hmm.
You might think of the fact that both Gilberto Jimenez and Jarrod Duran were two of the breakout stars of the system last year. But like the middle infielders, the outfielders, I was stunned by, at least pre-2017, just how little the organization committed to players at this position.
Yeah, it's crazy. Other than Andrew Benintendi.
Well, other than Benintendi, and obviously also there's Rusney Castillo.
But he wasn't listed on this.
We don't list him, but he counts.
Yeah.
In terms
but
of
other than those two, they didn't give more than, I think, $450,000. Oh, no, $500,000 to Tate Matheny. And after that, it was $450,000.
$700,000.
That was the most in the draft. And then the most internationally was $450,000 to Yohan Ibar, who turned into a pitcher. Then after that, it was $200,000 for guys. No, it was $450,000 for Nelfi Ryu, but he was technically a shortstop, so I don't really count
that was 2017. I mean, that's,
you're right.
That's the same year they drafted.
Internationally, if you take out the guys whose contract were voided, it was $300K, or I guess it includes them, $300K for a guy who I didn't even know was in the system and was traded for Rajai Davis. So They just didn't spend a lot.
Yeah, in the draft, it's $384K for Jagger Rusconi.
Yeah, and
then at the time, in theory, and kind of now, sort of a second baseman.
Yeah. And then the interesting thing was in the draft in 2017, it all shifted. And all of a sudden they took, 4 high school outfielders and gave them all over slot.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, they took Nick Decker, gave him over slot. They gave Dylan Hardy, Caleb Ramsey, and Jarrod Duran slot.
And then international that year too.
Yeah. So I said Jarrod Duran. And then internationally in 2017, there wasn't a lot. But 2018, their top 5 bonuses were all listed as outfielders. Granted, one of them is now moved to one of them played more games at first base, so we fudged it and moved him to first base for this article.
Yep.
But they gave a ton and same with last year. They gave big bonus to outfield. Their top bonus was an outfielder. And I think again this year they're linked with their top bonus being another outfielder.
One of the top bonuses they've given out.
Yeah, it's going to be like $2 million or something.
$2 million.
Yeah, I think it's in the top. I think it's in the top 5 of any bonus they've given to an international amateur.
I don't know if it's top 5, but it's close because you've got Iglesias. Well, Moncada, Iglesias were both the 2 highest.
Yeah. But after that,
got $2 million.
Daniel Flores got 3.1.
Flores got 3.1, so maybe it's number 5.
But I think it's right around there. It's right around there. Yep. So it's just interesting that they've kind of shifted, and now they're giving a lot of money to outfielders.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that they traded Blake Swihart for an outfielder.
Yeah, Marcus Wilson, who's in the top 25.
So
yeah. But the thing is, if you look back in that pre-2017, they have nothing to show for it really either, other than Benintendi.
And I mean, the best prospect from that era, again, other than Benintendi, which you can't ignore, is a relief pitcher.
Yeah.
In Yohan Ibar.
And I would argue the best drafty outfielder is Cole Sturgeon.
Yeah, I would take Sturgeon. Yeah, I mean,
it's him or Tate Matheny.
And then injuries didn't help with Jagger Rusconi and Kyrie Washington.
No, but with who's currently in the system, Cole Sturgeon's developed into a very, very good organizational player who is above average defender with a 70 arm in the outfielder. And last year he hit a little bit. He's 28. I know that.
Well, and then the thing is the fact that this is the debate.
Yeah.
Tells the story.
He hit 277 last year in AAA with 10 home runs.
Yeah.
It's not good. But internationally, though, as you said, the best player is a position player. So it's just
a reliever, you mean?
Yeah. It's just fascinating how it's worked out. But then you look at what they've done recently, and
they went bonkers. I think where this stems from, Ian, the Red Sox had the best outfield, I think, in the major leagues for
a couple of years,
3 years.
Yeah.
When did Benintendi come up? I mean, you can't even say when Benintendi came up
16?
Because they knew they had Bradley.
Came up in 16, right?
Yeah, because they drafted him in 15.
Yeah.
They knew they had Bradley up. They moved Betts, so they had Bradley and Betts in place. Who was the first left fielder with them? Why am I blanking on this? I mean, I guess it was Chris Young for a minute. They kind of
Was it
rotated some guys.
Daniel Nava or someone?
No, Nava predated them because Nava was the 2013 World Series team. Why can I not think of who was in left field before Tate Matheny or before Benintendi?
The 2015 Red Sox left fielder was Hanley Ramirez.
Oh, shit. You mean 2014? Oh, no, 2015. Yeah,
no, 2015.
Yeah,
Wait, Bradley,
and then in 2016, because that's when they moved Hanley to first.
in 2016, the left fielder was Brock Holt. And then
but
Andrew
they had
Benintendi.
Chris Young.
It was Chris Young mostly, and then Benintendi came up.
Yeah. So, yeah, because it was kind of a dumpster fire. Oh, that's when they moved Swihart to left, and he got hurt.
Yeah, and he got hurt. Yeah, they were trying everyone in left field in 2016.
Yeah, they didn't have a left fielder.
No.
But it's like they figured they were set and didn't really devote resources to the position. And then, like, in 2017, they realized, oh, hey, Mookie Betts and Jackie Bradley are both going to be free agents after 2020. We should probably have the next guy up ready to go.
Well, and that's why, like, other than Jarrod Duran, there's no one high, and Jarrod Duran's a unique case.
Well, because he tore through the system.
Exactly. He tore through the low minors.
Draftee.
But there's no one in the high minors who I think is nothing. Like a potential. Like, I would be hard pressed to I wouldn't project anyone in the high minors other than Jarrod Duran as like someone who I think spends more than like a cup of coffee on a major league roster right now.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe Wilson if like something clicks.
Yeah, Wilson, like maybe he's an up and down guy,
step forward,
or a platoon guy, but like Jarrod Duran is the only one who I think could like go up and stick, but I'm not even sure he's a starter.
Right.
So it's like they just have nothing in the high minors, but then you go to the low minors, and the low minors outfielders, there's a ton of interesting stuff. And so, yeah, it's it's kind of like middle infield in that regard. It's a very interesting set of players, but
it is, and you know, but even when they have given out money, and I will turn this over to you. I mean, in the draft, you look at the 2017 draft was the first one where that's like you said, they gave out 4 overslot bonuses. They gave Cole Brannon in the second round $1.3 million. Hold on. They gave Tyler Esplin $250K in the 7th. They gave David Durden $125K, which I guess is slot, not overslot, in the 20th.
Yeah, and he's now a football player.
And he's now a football player in college. And they gave Tyler Dearden $140K in the 29th round. Still not a ton of return there. Brannon, I think at this point we can say, not a good pick, especially for what they paid him. Go ahead. That's your cue. I'm giving you Ian.
Yeah, sorry. I was on Baseball Reference looking at something, and it just started playing an ad, and it distracted me. Can you repeat your little spiel again?
Cole Brannon, go.
Yeah, so they gave Cole Brannon $1.3 million, and do you want to know what Cole Brannon's career average is?
198.
197.
Oh, dang. Close.
His triple slash in his career is 197, 292, 235.
I will say that seeing him last year, he can go get it in center field.
Fine. I didn't like the pick at the time. I'm going to talk about it more in writing at some point when I think I'm going to do some stuff talking about some draftees. But I just didn't get the pick at the time. Every report I read, it was just not exciting. You look at like where he was mocked, and they gave him way more than it seemed like they should have. And he can't hit at all, and is just not a very good baseball player. And so that's just a huge swing and a miss in the second round. Giving that player $1.3 million is a big problem. And, you know, when you draft someone in the second round, and this is kind of a trend of something I've noticed, is the high profile misses have set them back big time. And they have not been good at drafting in the early rounds. And it was like a stretch from like, it was not they're decent in the first round, but from like 2013, even 2012 onward, they have just not done well from like the second to fifth round at all. And that's kind of where the weaknesses come from. I guess the one exception is the 2016 draft. That was Sean Anderson, Bobby Dahlbeck, Mike Schwerin. Like that's very solid.
Yeah, that's 3 major leaguers.
But you look at 2013, like that's an all-time bad draft, which we're going to discuss at some point. especially if there's no minor league
season. That's the
season.
Trey Ball draft for anyone.
We're doing like an episode on the 2013 draft because it is that top 10 rounds is fascinating. But then like 2014, Jake Cozart in the 3rd round, Kevin McAvoy in the 4th round, Josh Ockhamy's the 5th round pick. 2015 draft, Austin Rye in the 3rd round, Tate Matheny in the 4th round, Jagger Rusconi in the 5th round, like, and they didn't have a 2nd round pick that year. 2017, Cole Brannon, Brett Netzer, Jake Thompson. Like, they just can't, they have not drafted well at all in those rounds, and it's really set them back. And Cole Brannon, I think, exemplifies the problems they've had. And when they drafted him, he was someone I think they wanted and they thought could develop into like someone who would be a top 10 prospect in the system by now. And he's just not. And yeah, I just don't have any hope really with him. So it's kind of set up in a situation where that's a sunk cost. And then, anyway.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, let's move on because we got 2018 is when you get to Decker in the 2nd round. $1.25 million bonus. Duran, they, pull triple cherries on a 7th rounder at slot. A couple of guys later. Last year, not a whole lot in the outfield, but like you mentioned, all the international guys that they went after, and you're on mute. But
they've done a ton internationally, so I think that kind of balances out.
Yeah,
with the outfield.
I mean, with all the outfielders, I mean, like when you did the sleeper on this article. We went with 4 international guys because we haven't really seen them, but it's Darryl Belen who got a modest bonus and was an older signee, but, looks the part, could go straight to Lowell.
He looked I saw him in Instructs get like 2 at-bats, and he had a bomb off the wall in one of them, and he is just huge.
Yeah, well, he also huge is Brian Gonzales, who got $500K. Eduardo Lopez and Eduardo Vaughn. Lopez got $1.15 million.
Yeah.
Vaughn got $550K.
And Lopez and Vaughn are more of your like projection types physically, whereas Bellin and Gonzales are like pretty filled out. So yeah, I mean, they just have a really nice mix there. All those guys are interesting. All of them performed in various capacities. Some hit home runs, some did a little of both. Some hit for average, had some speed, had some power. Yep. Some got on base a ton. So it's all those guys are really interesting. And of course, then the best guy from that group who's in the low minors is Gilberto Jimenez, who we don't need to talk about because we've talked about him a bunch.
Well, we'll just say top prospect was Jimenez. Next in line was Jarrod Duran. Nick Decker is a guy whose stock could rise in 2020, and then we had the 4 sleepers.
And then I think the other one is too. In last year, Juan Chacon was their top bonus, and he's someone who was really impressive in the Tricky League from what we've heard. So he's another outfielder.
Yep.
Exactly. So they and then there are a couple other guys that we'll talk about in the future in one of the articles.
Dixon.
Yeah.
Garcia.
So they have some really interesting guys in the low minors, but like middle infield, they're just years away, and so it puts the system in a weird position.
It does. But yeah, we'll do a wrap up on state of the system next episode. Let's close really quick with a couple of remaining emails, Ian.
Mm-hmm.
First email's from Andy. Andy says, glad you guys are hanging in there. Thanks for the podcasts. It's a welcome diversion while I work from home. I have a few things to throw out there for your consideration as discussions. 1, biggest surprises. What are each of your biggest surprises for a draftee who failed to make it to the majors and a draftee who did make it to the bigs? Ian, I thought about this one a little bit, so I'll give you some time to stall.
Ooh, I like this question.
Biggest surprise for a guy who failed to make it? I might go with Ryan Kalish. Well, I guess he made it to the majors.
Is it made it to the majors or to perform in the majors?
Made it to the majors. So I guess Kalish made it to the majors. So I guess I didn't think about this. Ex-players. Ex-prospects. All right. Guys who didn't make it to the major leagues at all. Oh, I mean, there's Lars Anderson. Oh, no, he made it up.
He made it.
Let's see here. Some guys who didn't make it to the majors.
I mean, I think there's a pretty obvious answer.
There is.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead then?
I think it's Trey Ball. When I first saw first saw Trey Ball
to not make it at all,
it was like, dang, like you get it, because when he was what was he, 2013, 2014, he was 18, 19 years old.
He looked exactly like he does now, which is the problem.
But this is the problem. He didn't improve at all. But when you first saw him, it was like, all right, this is an 18-year-old with a 6'6" frame who's uber athletic, up to 94. Good set. He has some potential with the secondaries. Like, there was a lot to like there. The problem was he just never developed at all. Like, the stuff he showed when he was 18 was the same stuff he had when he was 23. And so that was kind of something you can't really predict, or it's hard to imagine someone like him not improving at all, but he didn't. And that's kind of where they are with him.
Another guy that I'll throw out there who I made it to the majors technically, but he got like 35 at bats. Garrett Cicchini.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Just that, I mean, the defensive limitations were a problem, but like the just sudden not being able to hit was.
Yeah, I remember seeing him in AAA and being like, yikes.
Like, what happened? I mean, I think he just got in his own head, and that's what happens with a lot of guys. That's what
he tried
with
to
Lars Anderson.
He tried to start hitting for power when he wasn't a power hitter, and when you do that, that's just like that's.
Sean Coyle, I think, never played in the majors, so there's another guy.
Yeah,
who I was surprised never got there.
And I'm trying to think of in terms who did get there.
That I was surprised that they did get there. I mean, there's the one obvious one, and Daniel Nava.
Well, no, I don't count him because he was too far. He didn't get drafted.
Well, why though? Because they signed him out of the. I mean, we spent a year, but who cares how old he was? And that's exactly it. They signed him as an indie ball guy who went to Salem.
Yeah, no.
We spent a year telling people to ignore his performance in Salem.
My answer is Mike Miller. I would have never guessed. He's a major leaguer. That was the question, right? Can you repeat the question?
Cheap. No, I'm not going to.
But it's a good answer because I would have never thought Mike Miller would ever make the major leagues, and he did, even though it was for like one game. But
yeah.
I mean, if you want me to go with like someone who has exceeded my expectations,
yeah.
I mean,
Aaron
guess
Wilkerson is another guy like Nava.
Who?
Aaron Wilkerson.
Yeah, I kind of liked him in AAA though. Yeah. I think like I thought Jalen Beeks was a big leaguer, but I think just his progression was like it was like exciting to follow because I remember when he signed and we first saw him and it was just like, all right, that's fine, like solid or depth guy.
How about
and then like a year later it was like, ooh, this guy's good.
How about this one, Robby Scott?
Yeah, that's another one, undrafted free agent out of North Florida or something.
He had been at FSU.
Or FSU, yeah. But I think Mike Miller.
He might have transferred in there.
I would have never.
He transferred there from a JUCO.
I think Bobby Pointer's another good one.
Bobby Pointer's another good one, especially the way he did it, just kind of coming off the radar entirely.
Yeah, because he was a 14th round pick or something.
Yeah, senior out of Florida.
$10K.
Yep.
I think he's probably a better answer than Mike Miller because Mike Miller got called up just as like a
one game. Yeah.
Whereas Pointer's pitched, like 35 innings in the big leagues. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's a good question though. That would be a fun one to kind of like explore further when we had more time to research.
The unmeasurables. Physical gifts are great, but it's fun to talk about how prospects grade out in different tools. But if you had to give the mental makeup aspect of prospects a coefficient value in determining the likelihood of success, what would it be? For example, say you gave Pedroia a 50% shot at becoming an MLB regular based on physical tools as a draft pick. How would you alter that 50% change based on his attitude, understanding of the game, etc.? 50% times 1.2 versus times 0.08 if he had a reputation for not being the hardest worker. I don't know that I could do that. And the thing is, like using the Pedroia example, you can't ignore the fact that he has otherworldly eye-hand coordination.
Exactly, and that's something you would know from
I mean, as far as makeup, I think for me what happens more with makeup is I tend to think of it as guys not maximizing their tools because we've heard plenty of stories, Ian, of guys who had all the talent and who, I mean, I remember when I got this email, I thought of one guy who I don't know if you'll remember, they gave a interesting bonus to, and he refused to run.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And so he just never left the complex because he was like, yeah, I'm not running. And it's just like, what? Like, I think he got kicked off a bus or something at one point. Like he was going to go with them to a road game, and they were like, screw it, like, you're not coming.
Well, I think the other thing is, too, like, in terms of makeup, like, I hear a lot, because when I'm talking to people, like, oh, this guy's the best guy, the work ethic's incredible. And a lot of the time it's talking about a guy who has no chance of making the big leagues.
Yeah,
and
it's
so,
a
like,
way to be nice, yeah.
It can only get you so far, is my point.
Yeah, and the thing is, when Tristan Casas, and I don't even know, I'm not saying this based on anything, right? But if Tristan Casas is the hardest worker in the room, it doesn't rise to the top of his scouting report because you've got so much else to talk about what makes him a good player. Whereas, like, I'll use an example because we just updated his profile. Like, Tanner Nishioka is a good org guy because he's a smart kid who, you know, is apparently good in the locker room as far as we know, like, works hard, and you're going to keep that guy as the, you know, guy that fills the starting spot when you need him, as opposed to some guy who's a jerk. Whereas if like if the first round pick is a jerk and gets into multiple fights over the course of his minor league career, they're actually definitely big guys. I mean, you probably know who I'm thinking of right now, but. And actually, you know what? I think, did Kapler say, I think Kapler talked about the fact that Jason Place got punched in the face once in a WEI article.
He might have. I don't know.
I think he did. No, he definitely did. Because he talked about one of the two episodes we heard about. And, yeah, I mean, when we hear about that with guys, it definitely bumps them down a little bit. Yeah. I don't know that I put a number on it, but.
No, I just kind of like. It's just more information to add into the report.
Yeah. Andy's third question is story time. What has been your best experience for a single trip to a park to scout an MILB game? Do you want to table that one for next episode?
Yeah, I have to think about it.
Let's think about that. I've got a couple of fun ones. The Lars Anderson Dennis story is one I might talk about. What were you going to say?
Maybe. Yeah. Let's talk about this. This is a good question.
It's a good question. We'll save that one for next time. Thanks for the email, Andy. We'll save that one for you.
Because that's what I want to think about a little more.
Yeah. Come on. Next question comes in from Austin. He says, hey guys, Austin from North Carolina here. Do you think this period could actually help the Sox to take a deeper dive into prospect evaluations? Could this lead to more shakeups in the system than we would expect? Obviously, that wouldn't be able to happen until next year, but just a thought I had. Thanks for the content. Thanks for the email, Austin. Ian, my thought is no.
What does he mean by a shakeup in the system?
I don't know. And here's what I would say is that I don't know what deeper evaluation you would do because you have guys whose job it is to do this. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're using – so, like, for example, we are using this downtime to update things like scouting reports, right?
Yeah.
We're doing that because we have day jobs. There are guys whose day job it is to have done that already. And they have interns who help with that and who help with the video and who help with, you know, player development. This is not, you know, for example, minor league coaches don't show up at the field, manage a game, and go home. They're writing up reports on guys. They're writing up, you know, game reports. They're in touch with Ben Crockett and, you know, with the, you know, various coordinators like, hey, this guy is ready to move up. This guy is not ready to move up. This is happening on a regular basis. So I don't think that this time allows them to take a deeper, like they're not taking this time to take an extra look at internal video of guys.
Yeah, I think they're kind of, yeah. And
they should have done that already.
Exactly. It's not adding any new information.
Yeah, it's a good question because I know where he's coming from, but it's like they have, heck, there might be teams that are doing that right now if they don't have the manpower.
I mean, I know what some teams, like scouts from other teams, are doing, and it's not this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then our last question comes from Pat. He says, hi, guys, with only 5 rounds in this year's draft. Don't worry, it's not a draft question, Ian. Could you see the Sox, assuming there is a season, trying to acquire prospects by taking on bad contracts? And then he throws the example out of the Will Myers trade that was rumored. The reports are rosters could be 30+, and the Sox, as one of the more wealthy teams, could afford this. Can you think of any other bad contracts they could take in exchange for prospects? Thanks for doing this. Stay safe, Patrick. Thanks for the email, Patrick. My first thought when hearing that the roster was expanding to 30, Ian, is that this would be a great opportunity to make the Will Myers trade.
Yeah, but I think the thing that you have to factor in now is like what happens with the CBT number.
Yep, exactly.
How is that impacted by this? Does this year still even count towards it? Like things like that are unknown.
Yeah, because we talked about this on text the other day, Ian, is that in a shortened season, I guess if you're doing prorated salaries, then you just cut the CBT in half, right?
Probably. I would assume it just prorates with the salaries.
But if we come out with some season that has, for example, the 50-50 revenue sharing split the owners have suggested.
I have no idea how that works.
How does that even work?
Yeah.
We don't even know how that works.
No, and I'm that's like, if I'm the Red Sox, that's probably my biggest concern is that if I'm internally is obviously they're trying to reset the CBT this year.
Yes.
If they play and it doesn't get reset, that's a disaster for them.
Yeah. They have to reset it, especially in a shortened season. The thing that people don't realize with the Will Myers contract is, yes, it is a, quote, bad contract because of what he's being paid. But because of the way the Will Myers contract
he's not getting
was
paid
set
that
up,
much. Like,
well, he's getting paid much more than for what he counts against the CBT.
Right, that's what I meant to say, yeah,
which is what made him attractive to the Red Sox, because he only counts against the CBT for like $3 or $4 million.
Yeah.
Even though he's getting paid like $15 million.
Right.
Because when he signed the contract, they bought out ARB years.
Yeah, it was like a 7-year contract. It was
it was like
long.
a 7 or 8 year contract, but like 2 or 3 of those years were ARB years.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a contract like, JD Martinez's where, it changes over time, but on average it's still $25 million. His went like 5.
It was a 6-year, $83 million contract.
Yeah. Are you on COTS?
Yeah, and it was, I'm on Sport Track, it's the same thing. It was $2 million, $2 million, $3 million, $20 million, $20 million, $20 million for base salary.
So he's making $20 million a year, but he only counts against the cap for like 5.
Yeah, he counts against the cap for, I don't know what it is, but it's less than that. So, because you also have to factor in the option year counts as a year and brings it down even. Yeah, I don't know exactly how much it is, but it's
not a lot. It's under $5 million.
Yeah.
So that's why he's attractive to a team like the Red Sox, because they can afford to pay him the $15 million. What the heck ever? They're basically paying the Padres $15 million for prospects, right? So that's easy. But the thing is like, I could see Major League Baseball putting some kind of unofficial moratorium on those kinds of deals right now, because they don't want to have another situation where the A's are selling all of their prospects to the Yankees, like the catfish hunter type stuff.
Yeah, so it was, his total number is like 13, and it was if they took on half of it, it would only be like $4 million. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's what it was, because
it would only be like,
we're going to pay half.
Yeah, so it's only like $4 or $5 million.
Because if they get half of the 20, that's $10 million off of the 13, so
correct.
It counts for 3. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yep. So his number is higher, but like they wouldn't be taking the whole thing, so it wouldn't be as much.
Right, but because of the CBT and the fact that the Red Sox number one goal this year needs to be to get under the CBT, especially
which they are currently under.
Right, they're under, but they can't go over it.
They're under it by I think like 13 million or something. But like, how does that change? Like, does the CBT number change next year because the revenue number is going to be completely different? Like, there's just a lot
probably
of
not, because it's collectively bargained. They'd have to give the players some kind of concession.
Right. So there's a lot to like, and I think that was one of the things I was most looking forward to this season, was seeing how High and Bloom leveraged that money in order to, because I think 100% they would have done that in some capacity, whether it be him or like, I'm thinking of like last year in the offseason when the Angels traded their first round pick, Will Wilson, along with someone for the Giants. Who was it? Zach Cozart.
Right, to get rid of the Cozart contract.
For cash considerations. Like, that's the kind of trades they would have been looking to do.
Yeah.
And I think that if baseball does start up, it is 100% something that will be viable, because you're going to have teams that are competing who just don't have as much cash as the Red Sox, who will want to make trades to improve. And especially if the Red Sox aren't in contention, there's no reason for them not to do things like that.
The team that comes to mind is the Oakland A's.
Yeah.
Do they have any big contracts? I mean, they probably don't even have. That's the thing, is these teams probably don't even have big contracts, right?
Oakland. What about like Chris Davis, who's not very good?
I don't see the fit there either, unless it's like they think JD Martinez is going to opt out because they're going to keep the universal DH.
And yeah, he's got another year next year.
Yeah, Chris Davis maybe.
Chris Davis is a bad contract.
Semion's not a fit, and he's a good contract.
Semion's a stud too.
Yeah,
but yeah, like
well, that's why he's not a fit. Yeah,
yeah, they're not. Like Will Myers,
Michael Fiers. Would you take Mike Fiers?
I would, but he's a serviceable pitcher. Like, why would the A's need to trade him?
That's true. They want him. Yeah.
I think like Will Myers is the perfect fit because it's a combination of a mid payroll team and he has no place for them. Well, he has a spot kind of, but it's not like meh. And he's under contract for multiple years. That's the key thing,
right?
Because a team's not going to try to get out of like a 1-year contract.
No.
They're going to be looking to get out of 2-3-year deals.
Right, because they're worried about their cash flow for the next couple of years as they try and ramp back up.
So maybe we can look into it and see. I think that's one of the things, like once we know there's a date and when the season is going to start, I think we'd be looking more into
how it's even going to work. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. All right, cool. Well, thanks for the questions, everybody. Again, it's podcast at SoxProspects.com. We want to talk about what you want to hear about. So hit us up, ask us a question, give us a thought. We want to hear from you. I think that's going to put a button on it. Thank you to Podcast Joe 2.0 for editing and producing the show. You can follow us on Twitter. Follow the site at Sox Prospects. You can follow me at SP Chris Hatfield and follow Ian at Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. Signing off. Stay safe out there, everybody. Stay sane. Ian,
we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, well, Ian, get any advice on a good downtime activity for quarantine?
I've been watching Top Chef. It's pretty good.
Nice.
There's soccer coming back this weekend. You could pick a Bundesliga team and become
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, the KB. We didn't even talk about the KBO.
Yeah, we could maybe. That's a
maybe
good point.
Next time.
But yeah,
Casey
I don't
Kelly.
know. Spend time with your family if you can safely, and go walking outside safely. I've just been enjoying my time, even if it's just like walking around my yard.
Get some vitamin D.
Yeah.
Gotta get that vitamin D. All right, everybody, we'll leave it at that. Go get some vitamin D. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in your eardrums soon.